Hi viewers, my name is Ben Gray. Welcome to another bulletin from at Newsworthy Publications. I'm an amateur civilian journalist living here in Bristol. I'm just providing you with an update, a current issue concerning my being falsely imprisoned, kidnapped, in fact, on false allegations that I'd made threats to shoot various members of staff at Queen's Square Chambers in central Bristol. I was arrested by a PC Jangs, no name provided, and another officer whose name I forget, and clapped in irons, handcuffed on suspicion of causing fear of violence to the staff who had rang 999 where I was outside with a loudspeaker, simply complaining about protesting against evidence of corruption, in particular against Catherine Flint. And you can go to my other channel, my other video, nothing to see here, in which I allege that Catherine Flint has colluded in my attempted murder, multiple instances of perverting justice and perjury and kidnapping. um, but this is basically a follow-on from that video, which is my trying to get police and public interest in the investigation into the evidence I have that Catherine Flint is corrupt every which way from Sunday. And when I was there on um, outside this chambers, as I say, with a placard and a, a megaphone device. And as I say, I was arrested on this. The people inside the chambers, Queen Square Chambers, had alleged that I made threats to shoot them, and there was also mention of my having thrown glass or glass bottle at the building or a glass container of some description. So I was placed in a police car in front stack handcuffs and taken to Patchway Police Station. I was booked in by Police Sergeant Joshua Twin after being detained in holding cells for about an hour. I pointed out that I had a SD card inside a GoPro camera, an action camera type device, which had recorded all my dealings when I turned up at the chambers and proved I had not made any threats of any description. And also, there was a civilian, because obviously the police had their body worn video. So on the body worn video, there was also a civilian who said he'd been with me the whole time and I'd made no threats to anybody. He was escorted away by a police sergeant, uh, Christopher Wright, Wright, who's had dealings with me before. I've made allegations that he's kidnapped me and falsely imprisoned me in other instances, but leave that to one side. He escorted the witness who said that I hadn't made any threats away from the scene. It's not sure if his details were taken. Other people were allowed to leave, so their details couldn't be taken as to what whether they had seen any threats from myself. And So I was detained for 3 hours. I asked the one of the officers, not Jangs, but the officer with him, well, they couldn't just play the SD card from my GoPro. To get the sound, because the GoPro has no proper sound, it would need to have been played. The SD card would have needed to be taken out and played on a mobile phone or something of that description, or a laptop. He said he couldn't facilitate that. He was frightened that the my SD card might cause an internal combustion or some ridiculous story about not being able to trust that it had to be done professionally by experts. So that if that argument applied, obviously it would mean to cars on the side of the road could potentially be um, you know wired to explode or whatever. And it was ridiculous because I was the one who had referred to the SD card in the first place. But in any event, I was banged up in cell for about 3 hours. At one point, I did say I wanted representation, although no firm will represent me. And I forget the name of the solicitor, but one of the solicitors from Alan Hall Solicitors, who have already had to pay me £800 compensation as ordered by the Law Society in 2008 when I was charged with a matter which they were supposed to be defending on, and never. They gave me ridiculous advice and never turned up to meetings, and so obviously they shouldn't be anywhere near my case. And also, I think in 2021, about that period, they gave a fake bail address to some suspect client of theirs, a drug dealing suspect who had called Torian White, who had given my address as his potential address if he was given bail. And this involved a PC Ratcliffe and another female colleague of his, threatening to kick my door in if I didn't open the door. And they then interrogated me about searching the place for Torian White to see whether it was indeed his bail address. And I convinced him without him entering that Torian White had nothing to do with me, but I'd found letters addressed to him as if he did live here, and that I'd tried to raise it with probation services who had been writing to my address. They weren't interested. The probation service weren't interested. The Ratcliffe and friend left after about 10 minutes, and that was the last I heard of that, except from a lawyer called Ned Kemp from Allen Hall Solicitors, who had written to my address again as Torian White's address, even after the police had been put onto my place, effectively by Ned Kemp, to use my house as a fake bail address. So he was continuing that even after there'd been a police investigation confirming that my house had nothing to do with Torian White. So obviously, and that's just a couple of issues concerning Allen Hall. So clearly, I just ignored his attempt to speak to me, whichever that lawyer was, and I informed the police inspector, whose name I forget, but again, I said I didn't want representation, as soon as I said that, within a few minutes, I was released. The card had been viewed by the police, and they accepted that I'd made no threats to shoot, or there would be no smashed bottles. So I said, "Are you going to investigate them for making false allegations and having me kidnapped and sexually assaulted?" Because whilst I was searched at the custody desk, there was a PC Jangs who frisked me all the way up to my groin, touching, my groin through the trousers, clearly as a sexual assault. Bearing in mind I was being kidnapped on false allegations from the staff at Queen's Square Chambers. So I was told that the matter had been referred to CID, but of course it should have gone to PSD, because where there's been evidence that the police themselves have committed grave misconduct, such as kidnapping, such as shooting, it's called serious corruption, and they should refer themselves directly to the IOPC, the Independent Office for Police Complaints, who are supposed to be independent from the police, and then they assess how it should be investigated. Obviously, you don't just refer it to another close colleague of the same force to investigate themselves and their own part in the kidnapping and the sexual assault. I was given the case reference number, which will come up on the screen. I don't have it off the top of my head, but this is still ongoing. This was apparently handed. All I could get out of this information, in terms of all the only information I could get as to the progress of this investigation, where I'm supposed to be the victim. They've refused to take a witness statement from me. And I know that there's a detective, constable, Lisa Martin, and she has been assigned to investigate me as victim of false imprisonment, kidnapping by PC Jangs, and the staff at Queen's Square Chambers. No name provided as to. I don't even have the full name of Police Sergeant Jangs, let alone the complainants who got me kidnapped from the chambers from Queen's Square Chambers. So all I know is that I've had one email from Lisa Martin, one or two emails confirming that she's investigating this matter and that she will be in touch with updates. And that was obviously months ago. This incident happened. On the 21st of October of last year. It's now we're now into the 1st of February 25. As I say, I've heard nothing since. I know also that an Inspector Jason CHIDGEY, the only information I could get from Lisa Martin was that her supervisor, the inspector, was Mr. CHIDGEY, and I then had to do search online to connect the name CHIDGEY to Jason CHIDGEY, who has custody of this whole matter. So what we have at the moment is a an ongoing investigation that I was kidnapped, I was sexually assaulted, I was manacled on false allegations of threats to shoot from a barrister's chamber who I was protesting about being corrupt in other matters, in particular the barrister there, Catherine Flint. And now I'm being basically stonewalled by the police in terms of any update or witness statement or progress of their so-called investigation into their colleagues' arrest of myself on the 21st of October 24. Um, when I was detained, just for confirmation, we can see that there's a custody record stating that police received this. This was made by Joshua Twin, Police Sergeant Joshua Twin. He was the sergeant present at the scene. When he authorised my detention, he made a statement. Police received several 999 calls from differing members of the public stating that DP, that would be detained person, meaning myself, has made threats to shoot members of staff inside a premises on Queen Square. DP is then alleged to have thrown objects or items at the building. The objects can be heard hitting the building. Officers have attended, arrested for Section 4 public order. And then the record simply tails off as to my release, um, with no update on why I was being released, no mention of the SD card having been. And so we see at the end of the custody record, there's no resolution to why I was being released, or the content of the SD card, or the investigation being referred to Inspector Lisa. So sorry, to Detective Constable Lisa Martin. It just says simply light. Um, the last message was that from Inspector, I think it's Inspector Garrett, Katie Garrett, but I could be incorrect there. But the DP cell light has been switched back off. Um, so a rather threatening final last record there in terms of my detention. They kept approaching me, coming into the cell. At one time, I threw tissue paper onto the CCTV camera that points directly at you whilst you're in the cell, including the toilet area, which is only slightly blocked off. But when I threw tissue paper there, I got involved with an argument with Inspector Garrett about whether I could get more toilet paper if for blowing my nose and other reasons. And she said she wasn't going to provide that. So that was my last exchange with the inspector there. And then I'm released, and as I say, there's no information as to the outcome, which should normally be included, or even the process of my being released. So I complained to PSD, who are supposed to be again independent from the police themselves, and we'll come to that in a moment. And you can see here is the uh, record that was provided by the officer that was appointed by Police Standards Department to investigate my complaints of being sexually assaulted, of misconduct in office, of perverting justice, kidnapping, surrounding my arrest on 21st of October outside Queen Square Chambers. And it should be noted that the reason why I've entitled this this video is entitled "The Dirty Doings of Popeye-The-Pervert and Crew." So in due course, I made a formal complaint to Professional Standards Department of the Avon and Somerset Constabulary in terms of my arrest and collusion of the police in my being kidnapped, sexually assaulted, made the victim of perjured statements by staff at Queen's Bench Chambers. This was responded to with a complaint reference number, CO hyphen 2359, CO/2395/24. The assigned officer in the case was a police constable, um, KARL PETERS, column number 992. Police Constable KARL PETERS is a former naval officer, and he'd been assigned to investigate his colleagues, which included the complaint from me, which was included in the record that he provided of the complaint made. Complainant alleges officers have colluded in kidnapping, perverting public justice, sexual assault, misconduct in public office, assault, in quotation marks, unless or until I hear otherwise from CID that evidence Queen Square Chambers staff perverted justice by making false criminal allegations. I threatened to shoot, and threw items at them amounting to conspiracy to kidnap and sexual assault me. Bearing in mind Jangs, that's Police Constable Jangs, touched my genitals as part of his Section 54 pay search of my person, are being investigated. I am entitled to assume that this matter has not been referred to CID and Morgan Jangs. Sorry, yeah. So the colleague that I've mentioned earlier in this video is Morgan. Again, I don't recall the first name if it was ever given. Jangs and Wright, who I mentioned, are abusing their position of public office by colluding in the above offences. So it's quite clear there that the nature of the complaint is of the most major serious criminality. Kidnapping carries life imprisonment, so it is considered one of the most serious common law offences. Perverting public justice again carries life imprisonment and is considered a very serious offence. And sexual assault is clearly no minor matter, nor is misconduct in public office or assaults generally. So the official IOPC guidance, which is governs how the PSD are supposed to frame the investigations or what they're supposed to do with various complaints, is any evidence of serious corruption is supposed to be referred to the IOPC in the first instance. That is, they don't have the power to investigate themselves or allocate themselves to investigate until the IOPC have signed off on this who should investigate the matter, because sometimes the IOPC will investigate, sometimes the IOPC will oversee the investigation of the police, and sometimes they'll just let the police get on with it themselves. In my case, they always just really refer it back to the police having made a decision. That used to be the policy uh, of PSD, because they are so corrupt and so in the pockets of each other, and the High Court judges that are obviously referred to in my other videos, that they simply do not refer it to the IPCC and decide what that it should be allocated to themselves without any involvement of the IPCC, regardless of the guidance saying that serious corruption, allegations of serious corruption, should be referred to the IOPC to ensure some degree of independence. And so this officer, obviously together with his colleagues, I haven't got any details of his senior officers. I've written trying to get the inspector or the supervisor of Mr. Peters, but he's refused to respond, so he's withholding the name of his senior officer. But in any event, he clearly has just simply fabricated, he's simply treating what is obviously the most major allegations of sickening corruption and criminal abuse of power by his colleagues, as if it's a minor in-house complaint that shouldn't be dealt with as serious corruption at all, but in fact just dealt with in-house by a the lowest ranking police officer possible, to investigate such major serious criminal misconduct. And if you look at the bottom of the final part of his letter or his report, which include his letter that includes the report. So at the bottom of the letter that includes the report, as outlined in terms of complaints of kidnapping and sexual assault, etc., KARL Peters states the following. I have taken an initial review of the available material relating to the allegations listed above and carried out an assessment concerning any potential misconduct or criminal behaviours, and at this time no officer, police staff have behaved in a manner in which disciplinary proceedings are justified or behaved in a criminal manner. I will be establishing one of the following for each allegation. The level of service provided by the police was acceptable. The the level of service provided by the police was unacceptable, or I am unable to determine if the level of service provided by the police was acceptable or not. Should I find material, information, evidence during my investigation to suggest that potential misconduct, criminal behaviour has taken place, then a reassessment will take place. I will review all available material, etc. Well, so he's saying that at the moment um, obviously this is ridiculous because he's saying that the allegations listed, um, that there's no evidence of at this time no officer police staff have behaved in the manner in which disciplinary proceedings are justified. Well, this is nonsensical. What he's looking at is what is recorded is the allegation, and the allegation is supposed to set out that terms of reference for the investigation that is then ensues from the allegation made. He can't decide that the allegation is false, basically that I perverted justice by making false allegations, that I'm a liar, and that there is no evidence of kidnapping or false imprisonment or sexual assault, even prima facie, for him to immediately state that the officers have not behaved in a criminal manner. That means he's already carried out the investigation, and come to the conclusion when he makes it quite clear for the rest of the letter that he is about to embark on an investigation. And indeed, what he seems to be saying is that a complaint, I mean, what he is saying, not seems to be saying, but his literal meaning of his letter is that the alleged allegations of kidnapping or perverting justice are, in fact, a complaint of service, poor service, and which is absolutely meaningless. What that would mean that I'm complaining that the kidnapping was of a poor service, or perverting justice was of a poor service, meaning it should have been better, it should have been better carried out, or that just nowadays kidnapping is reviewed by KARL Peters, and this is what he's actually saying: kidnapping or sexual assault is merely considered as a complaint of poor service from the people that have kidnapped you and sexually assaulted you. And of course, in terms of the evidence, there was clear evidence. Otherwise, I would have been charged with the shooting of the threats to shoot the staff, Section 4 allegation, and the throwing containers at the building. So the fact that they have been proven as fabricated was the reason that DC Lisa Martin from CID was investigating that evidence. So, on what basis can a police constable who's obviously junior to a CID detective constable who is overseen by and certainly much more senior is Inspector Jason CHIDGEY, who is overseeing the investigation into my alleged kidnapping on the 21st of October. So, on what possible basis can a police constable who is far junior to Inspector CHIDGEY possibly be investigating CHIDGEY as to ongoing criminal misconduct? Because there has been no conclusion to the CID investigation that is supposed to be carried out with myself as victim in terms of the false imprisonment at the hands of Police Sergeant Jangs. And there's no dispute. There's been no query from Jangs, did he touch my testicles during the search? How can touching the testicles possibly be justified in a straightforward body search for, contraband items? Um, which would be better done, in my view, from a strip search without bodily contact than it would having this officer making contact with the genitals. But obviously, what we have here is effectively a sort of a naval joke. This is probably the kind of revolting conduct that I suggest people like KARL Peters got up to when he was in his Navy days, when this kind of behaviour probably went on because they were a long time at sea, and the Navy is famous for having incidents of homosexual interaction, which, if it's legal and consensual, is not necessarily a problem for me, but obviously it must, to some degree, in some cases, uh, become unwanted or invasive or obviously illegal assault. And I would suggest that if you're in the Navy, you become hardened to and uh, more accepting of it. So, which is why he's been chosen, obviously, to investigate. And it is like a joke within the Navy. If somebody complains about being sexually assaulted from another Navy officer, and the sergeant says, "Okay, I'll write that up as a service complaint." And obviously, service has a double entendre because service also means providing a service can have a sexual connotation in and of itself. So it's quite clear that if this officer, PC KARL Peters, genuinely believes that a complaint of kidnapping or sexual assault or any of that matter is it should be recorded up or written up and treated immediately as a complaint that poor service has been provided by the victim of the kidnapper and the person sexually assaulted, then obviously this just simply reflects on KARL Peters being a degenerate, um, you know, pervert in his own right. And he's clearly got a very disgusting idea of what amounts to a complaint of poor service and a complaint, a serious criminal complaint of being sexually violated by a serving police officer who is in the general process of kidnapping the person on the false allegations of the threats to shoot. Um, and obviously, it is this constable who is as guilty, and he might as well be having a ringside seat at the kind of at everything that's unfolded, from the false allegation from the staff at Queen's Square Chambers uh, to my being manacled, all the way through to my being having my genitals touched as part of the body search from PC Jangs. And you'll note in the record that PC Jangs is effectively anonymous because he doesn't even provide his full name. I've got other police reports where any officer that is named as part of the complaint is the full name is provided as the person being investigated. In this case, he remains anonymous. He's just Police Constable Jangs. There's no other record of his full name, and I didn't remember it at the time. So this is the kind of obscene and revolting misconduct that goes on in it's under the jurisdiction of Sarah Crewe. Sarah Crewe being obviously the chief constable of the Avon Somerset Police, and all her officers act vicariously through her will. So she's effectively this pervert in chief, presiding over these absolute evil and revolting degenerate pervert scumbags. And obviously, if the press aren't interested because they're colluding in it, and what do you expect from people like the BBC when all they can produce is people like Jimmy Savile and Hugh Edwards? You're not going to really expect much better. But the press generally aren't interested, so the police can go about their business knowing that they have their friends in the judiciary and in the local chambers. Catherine Flint was assigned to me in 2018-19 as a barrister to was provided by a solicitor that I got in London on the basis that I couldn't get firms to represent me on the Western Circuit where I live in Bristol, and they appointed Catherine Flint as the barrister who that firm got for me. And I complained about Catherine Flint because she was from the local chambers and therefore she would be influenced by other corrupt judges that I'm complaining about. And she insisted, no, I'm totally independent and have utter integrity. And I won't go into the details of the evidence I have because that's in my videos. I've already said on Nothing to See Here. But the long and the short of it is that this is she's got so much integrity that I end up being arrested, manacled, carted to a police station, detained for hours on false allegations from her own staff.